Okay, great. Lovely. Well, thanks very much for coming. Just a brief agenda for this afternoon. We've got 4 things to look at. So just having a look at data explosion, because there's huge amounts of data around today, and just having a look at why that's important. Looking at automation and AI, looking at market feedback around the future, and then thinking about how we use that all together, thinking about assurance testing and what that could look like in the future. Okay, so first of all then, just thinking about data and the explosion of data that we have around. There are data statistics that you can get off the internet about a whole range of different things here. There's all sorts of things that are interesting. So university level education, bachelor's degrees in data science were practically non-existent 5 years ago, whereas now this is a really big thing. And people going to university these days can do whole degrees in data science, and many education facilities are now providing this, and we may even deploy data scientists across our businesses as we do today. 2015, a poll among UK school students found that the majority of them preferred to learn Python than other languages, and this was from the UK, where obviously we like English. But yeah, Python is much more interesting and is a favoured language for students. 99% of organisations are actively investing in data transformation somewhere within their organisation. And if we turn the attention towards cyber, the FBI Cyber Most Wanted list back in 2016 had 19 people on it, all responsible for taking around 100 million from consumers in different ways. That list has continued to grow, and those amounts have continued to go up. And there's over 119 now on that most wanted list that they're looking for, where people have made significant amounts of money from cybercrime. 43% of cyber attacks are aimed at small businesses, but only 14% prepared to defend themselves, according to Accenture. If you've not seen the website at the bottom there, it's a really interesting one full of data around the creation of malware and how that's changed over the years in terms of both the types and the things that go on. But over 153 million new malware samples in 2022, or between March 21 and February 2022 were created. So there's an insane amount of things going on here where people are using things to try and get into our systems and our networks. So another quiz question for you. Between the dawn of time and 2003, 5 exabytes of data have been created at Google. Okay, so since Google was founded up until 2003, 5 exabytes of data have been created. Which answer do you think is correct? By 2010, this amount of data had been created every 30 days, and by 2021, it was being created every 24 hours. Or 2, by 2010, this amount of data was created every 10 days, and by 2021, it was created every 10 hours. Or 3, by 2010, this amount of data was being created every 2 days, and by 2021, it was being created every 40 minutes. So, what do we think? Hands up for 1. Okay, well done, Geraint. Hands up for 2. Okay, hands up for 3. Okay, yeah, it's number 3. So literally, every 40 minutes, the same amount of data that was created since Google began until 2003 has been created, is being added. Huge amount of information and data being managed. But knowledge, what do we actually really know? So at LRQA Nettitude, we're built on the professional capabilities and knowledge of our people, and that's really important to us as we develop services and bring things to the market for people. And your business too is no doubt built on the knowledge and capabilities that your people have got. And you rely on that for the services that you provide or the products that you're creating. Our greatest asset is our people. But what is it that we know? What is knowledge, and how do we actually amass that? And how do we understand that in our modern world? 65% of the world now uses the internet, and 92% of them use the internet on their phones. This graphic is from the World Economic Forum, and it shows a snapshot of what happened in a 24-hour period. 500 million tweets are sent every day. 294 billion emails are sent every day. 4 petabytes of data are created on Facebook. 4 terabytes of data is created from each connected car. 65 billion messages are sent on WhatsApp, and 5 billion internet searches are made. So if you think information is fascinating over a 24-hour period, let's see what happens in a single minute of every day on our planet. During an average workday, a single minute might seem negligible. 1 minute might be enough time for us to grab a coffee or take delivery of a parcel at home or check in with our kids and make sure they're behaving. But in other situations, a minute can be quite extraordinary. Imagine taking penalties in a World Cup. That minute is going to really count and focus your minds. Or finding yourself in a life and death situation where what you do is going to, every second counts towards the outcome. Well, in 60 seconds or 1 internet minute, users share over 1.7 million pieces of content. Someone somewhere is watching 1 million hours of video streaming. £445,000 is spent on Amazon, people buying products. How is Google coping with nearly 5 million search requests being submitted to them? And who is reading the 231 million emails that have just been sent in the last minute? The world in which we live today generates a colossal amount of data. But how on earth do we understand data at that scale? Well, let's have a quick look at another example. Now, don't worry, it is after lunch. I'm not going to deep dive into physics, partly because I don't understand it anyway, but we need to stay awake. But this facility here, which is built in the US, there's 2 of them in 2 different locations, is known as LIGO. It's the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory. And essentially, this was built to try and detect really small movements in space-time when things like supernovas happen or two stars collide. And essentially, it's built as a 4-kilometer beam that is sent out in one direction and a 4-kilometer beam that is sent out in another direction. The beam is split and sent along each beam. And then when it comes back together again, they measure the difference in terms of the time when those 2 beams arrive. And they've got 2 facilities in 2 different locations. Now, why am I mentioning this and why am I talking about this? Well, after decades of construction and over $1 billion of money that was spent to create this, it was built to try and detect this. The sensitivity of this is incredibly hard to fathom. Each arm, as I say, is 4 kilometers long, and very often over that distance, they're trying to detect changes that are as small as 1/10,000th the diameter of a photon. So mind-numbingly small amounts of difference that they're trying to measure through this technology. As you can imagine, it required a big team to build this and to put it together. The scientific collaboration involved hundreds of people, many who had never met or even interacted with each other. They used tools and knowledge contributed by thousands of other people, who in turn rely on the tools and knowledge of millions of others. Such organisation doesn't just happen by chance. It requires a sophisticated technical and social system to bring that knowledge together, working hand in hand to be able to create something so complicated. Trust feeds evidence, and that feeds on into trust. In 2015, LIGO was the first global project to directly detect gravitational waves created by a collision of 2 black holes 1.3 billion light years away. And it's gone on to detect other changes that have been well known in the scientific environment since. So just to put this in context, back in 1786, this book was released, which was a single book that covered all the scientific knowledge that was known at the time about astronomy, geology, zoology, medicine, and botany. So in other words, a reader could pick up the book and all of the scientific knowledge that was known about at that time about all those subjects was able to be contained in one volume. You just can't do that today. The amount of things that have been discovered and the amount of complexity that we have in the world around us means that no one single person could ever know everything that is needed for things to operate or things to run and do. Accomplishing anything outside of a very narrow field of study now requires scientists to share skills and share knowledge and stand on the shoulders of giants. Knowledge depends as much on trust and relationships as it does on textbooks and observations. We often overestimate our ability to think we know what we know. MIT in the US ran an exercise a while back where they asked their students to sit down and ask all of them to draw a picture of a bicycle. Now, every single student there had ridden a bicycle, they probably owned a bicycle, and they probably thought they knew how a bicycle operated. But you can see from the diagram here that actually the variety in what people thought they knew about a bicycle didn't really translate through into reality when they were asked to draw a picture of one. Most of these would never work. Most of these don't actually relate to reality of what a bicycle actually does and how it works. And it kind of showed that actually people, although they thought they knew something about something, realized that actually they didn't know as much as they thought. So what does it mean to know something? Well, today we need to often stand on the shoulders of giants. We need to rely on other people's knowledge collectively as we build things and as we achieve things and as we do things. A quote from MIT said, "We overstate enormously the individual's ability to amass knowledge and understate society's role in processing it. You may know that the diesel fuel is bad for gas engines and that plants use photosynthesis, but can you define a diesel engine or explain photosynthesis, let alone prove how photosynthesis actually happens?" So what does all that mean for us in the cyber world? Well, as we grow and as we move forward, our world gets more complicated too. Our ability to understand what the bad guys do and how they do it and the techniques and the things that they might get up to becomes more than one single person can really understand. We need to recognize that we need each other. We need the skills, we need the expertise, and we need the knowledge from many other people in order to help ourselves within our organizations, to help build for the future. We'll talk about AI and ML in a moment, but it's already being seen as the silver bullet to come and help. But is it really that significant? So as we think about continuous testing and providing assurance that our systems and our networks are secure, we're going to have to rely on knowledge from lots of other people and organizations. But at the heart of it will be data, this huge amount of data that our world is creating and our own networks and systems are doing. So ultimately, we can't just stay with data. We need to find the insights within that data that can tell us the things that we need to act on and that we need to change and that we need to do things with. The goal is to turn data into information and information into insights. And perhaps there's a broader lesson for us as well. You know, we often think that we know more than we do. So actually respecting others and actually understanding and valuing the knowledge that other people have and recognizing that we can learn from them and learn from our peers is going to be hugely helpful. We heard this morning on the CISO panel how they really wanted to try and be able to build that trust between CISOs and between organizations when it comes to security, to share the knowledge, share our experiences, rather than be in our silos and keeping our things to ourselves. So much benefit we can get from sharing and collaboratively working together. So that's the first thing, just to get us thinking about data and some of the challenges. So at Nettitude, we've been thinking about how we move forward and what we need to do in terms of managing continuous testing. Our industry is very much still in the days of annual pen tests and looking at point-in-time assurance. But we need to move to the point where actually we have continuous assurance, and at any moment, at any time, we've got an idea of our status of our systems, our networks, and where we are. So that's really what we want to think about in the next few slides. So first of all, we've got some feedback from people that we've talked to. But first of all, another question. The UK Government Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport ran an annual cybersecurity. They do this every year and it's all published on their website. Which one of these do you think was true from their recent survey that they ran? So in 2022, the survey results show that at least in the last 12 months, 24% of UK businesses identified a cyber attack, or 39%, or 57%. So who thinks option 1? Anybody? No? Okay, option 2? Okay, a few hands. And option 3? Okay, 57%. It was actually option 2. So well done. Okay, but 39% of UK businesses identified a cyber attack. So I don't know if that's your experience from your organisation, whether that has been detected and known about, or whether it's happened without your knowledge, but this is a significant issue, as we all know, and something that we need to continue to think about. Gartner also produce annual surveys and do updates on this industry, which many of you have probably read. Their latest one that came out, some of the highlights are shown here. The one I want to really highlight on is 3 and 4, where they think looking to the future and thinking what's coming next. Their focus was to encourage us to prioritize and optimize investments in employee behavior, to enhance and sustain the efficacy of our security, and drive a focus on the essential role of people for security program success and sustainability. Both of those relate to humans, and it's that bit that I wanted to think about. They talk specifically about human-centric security design. And again, we heard a little bit about this morning from our CISO panel when they were talking about this. But the move away from just technology to thinking about, well, how do we actually encourage our people to do the right thing and to make it easy for them to do their jobs while they do that? As part of the survey that Gartner ran, 69% of employees basically admitted that they had broken a security control their company had put in place or sought to bypass it deliberately in order to meet an objective that they had. So that's nearly 70% of staff were saying, oh yeah, we've got some cybersecurity controls, but actually, I think I'm okay. I'll go around this because actually for this objective which I'm being targeted on, it's easier, it's faster, it's quicker, it won't have an effect on me. Over 90% of that 69% admitted that they knew their behavior would increase cybersecurity risk levels, but did it anyway because they felt it was the right thing to do based on what they were being targeted on or measured on or encouraged to achieve. 74% of employees would bypass a security control if they knew it would help them to achieve a business objective. So we need to make it much easier for our users to be able to be secure without putting roadblocks in place and making it difficult for them to actually do their jobs. So all this stuff here is really thinking about how do we make it almost in the background. Security is there, people are encouraged to do their jobs, but it's not seen as a blocker or a hurdle. It's something that is easy for them to try and achieve. And there's some ideas here which you can review and look at on another occasion. There was also another report that UCL did where they interviewed CISOs from the UK and looked at the common themes about the challenges that they were facing. And again, it's worth having a read and look at all of them. But again, just looking at the top ones on the top row, all relating specifically to the board and the messaging and how to convey that risk and how to explain it in language that they can understand. And again, this theme really came out in the CISO presentation this morning for those who were there. Boards struggle to understand cyber risk. It's presented often in technical language, which means that they don't understand. And if a cyber breach happens, it's often, well, we didn't understand what that stuff meant. We didn't know that that would have this business impact upon us. So we need to get better at explaining this in a way that actually translate the technical stuff into something that actually is meaningful in terms of business language and cyber risk. We also ran some surveys with our clients, and some of you may have responded over the last period of time, looking at the key things that they wanted and what they'd like to see change in the way security assurance is being done. One of the biggest things was being able to see immediate results and know right now, have I got a problem? Is there something that I need to deal with? Plus accessing remediation advice and reproducing conditions. Being able to access that data digitally so that they can incorporate it into their own systems and reporting and be able to manage and take it in. The idea being that if we have something tested, that actually that finding can be contextualized, it can be associated with a risk, it can be passed through to a ticketing system, it can be put in front of an engineer, and pretty much the moment it's found, there's someone who's prioritized it and has been able to put it in front of the person who needs to get it fixed. So that cycle of identifying an issue and getting it closed off and sorted comes down to minutes rather than ending up being days and weeks or whatever it takes at the moment in terms of how that data is managed. And then also, thirdly, viewing threat data on their organization. So understanding exactly what are the things I need to be worried about today, what are the top 3 things that I need to be concerned about, and how does that relate into my threat profile and the things that I worry about as the organization I am. So, AI and automation. Okay, so another question. So a byte is obviously, we know what bits and bytes all are. There are approximately 4,000 bytes of data for every grain of sand on Earth, 40,000 bytes of data for every grain of sand on Earth, or 400,000 bytes of data for every grain of sand on Earth. And I know this just blows your mind when you start to think about how many grains of sand there are on the Earth, but is it 1, 2, or 3? Who thinks it's 1? Who thinks it's 2? Okay, a couple. And 3? We all going with 3? Okay, the answer is 3. Okay, 400,000 bytes of data for every grain of sand on Earth. Huge amount of data, as we've said. So, crystal ball gazing, okay? We don't know what the future is going to hold. Lots of people are talking AI and saying that this is going to be the fourth industrial revolution. You know, this is the thing that's going to transform our lives in the next few decades in particular. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. We're not going to stand and make predictions and forecast that. We'll have to wait and see what actually happens. But some people are saying that this will have a bigger impact on the world than any of the 3 previous industrial revolutions that we've been through. That this could really transform both productivity, but advancements in different sectors and areas, and move things forward in many different ways. Who knows? We're going to have to wait and see. We went to a conference a few weeks ago in London, and Piers Linney, who's one of the Dragon's Den entrepreneurs who's invested a lot in tech companies, was there. And he was saying very much that, you know, we've moved from human-driven services where we have to do everything ourselves. At the other end of the spectrum, you know, you see it in all the movies, is that AI takes over the world and it's fully automated and they have their own intelligence and they go off and do their own thing. What we should be focusing on is the bit in the middle, the AI assisted. And that's really the reality for us for the next few decades. How can AI help us and support us in what we do today? It's not going to just overnight replace our jobs in most cases, but it is going to be there as something that can support us and help us and bring efficiencies into how we operate and how we do business. If you've been following Black Hat and DEF CON in the US, they've just had their conference over the summer, and they ran a load of workshops and technical forums there. The 2 big findings that came out of that was that no AI deployment can be better than the data on which it's trained. So if you train AI on bad data, you get bad results. So the quality of what goes in affects the quality of what comes out. And that big thing around, can we trust the output? Even if it's based on right data, the inferment and the output, is it actually trustworthy? And there's many examples. For anyone who's played with ChatGPT, you'll know that you can get some really bizarre output if you ask the right questions. And not always wanting to trust the results, even if you pointed at data sets that you can trust. So there's clearly some issues. You know, we are at early stage of this. Yes, it's going to change what we do and how we operate, but we need to think about how that's done. And there's many things that we can consider as we think about that. Bill Gates said, the first rule of any technology used in business is that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. The second is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. So where we apply that automation, and if it's built on good, solid, well thought out processes in the first place, will show whether we actually gain benefit from it or not. We've started to do some work with some clients where we're looking at LLMs and looking at how they want to integrate it and provide services within their businesses, either trained on their own data or using private models, thinking about some of the data privacy issues or the prompt injection challenges that are going to come along. In essence, it's another technology with another set of attack surface challenges and problems that need to be considered and thought about. And it will be new avenues for you know, the bad guys to have a go and try and do things, which they will do. So we need to consider that in the light of all of that. So the other thing that you know, I think is really important is to think about, and again, Piers Linney mentioned this when he was talking. He said effectively, AI is here. It's not a future thing now, it is here and it's arrived. And what we need to be doing in our organizations is making sure we're on the ship, not on the shore. So even though it may not have an immediate impact in your organization, or you think there's too many risks to be considered in embracing it now into your operational systems, we need to be on the ship as it starts to sail. We don't know necessarily which direction it's going in and quite where things will unfold, but we do need to start thinking about it and weighing up the ways in which it could support and help and move us forward. So out of interest, how many people here have organisations that have kind of embraced generative AI and are supportive about it being used within the business? And how many people have had sort of, sort of been told not to use it and hold back until we know more about it? Are many people embracing it and moving forwards with it? Yeah? Okay. And then many people have been told, no, don't leave it alone at the moment while we're thinking about it. Okay, so there we go. In the room here, we've got a mix of two spectrums on that already in terms of how we're looking. Okay, so where is all this going? So we ran a research project a while back looking at the sort of hundreds typical findings we get from all the pen testing we do across all of our clients. And we identified the 100, and then we took a view to go and look at them and say, well, out of those findings, which ones could be automated, either through programmatic methods or by using some form of machine learning or AI or whatever, and how many of those actually really still need a human being to drive them and put the 2 and 2 together to equal 5 when we look at that. 42% of those findings we found could be automated, either through straightforward means or through programmatic methods. Further 51% would require some sophisticated modelling of a target website or a target system, and a substantial part of that would need to be dependent on machine learning to be able to achieve some level of automation there. The final 7% were the really tough stuff that potentially in the future, we could have further help with from technology, but that really was the hard nut to crack and the stuff that really needed to stay with humans. So actually, over half of all those findings still need human beings to be involved to both investigate, to track it through, to make sure the testing is done in the way it needs to be. So simply automating everything is just not going to work. And again, it's obvious when you think about it, because many of our products and systems are built on business logic. And actually, it's the attacker's mindset that drives how they will find the weaknesses and how potentially they will get around the controls or bypass the things that have been put in place to try and protect the system. Again, what have people been asking for as we think about the future of testing? So this is the 5 sort of key things that came out of that. To be delivering continuous testing, providing findings, trends and risks. People want that. They want to move away from point-in-time testing. To be able to see that more frequently. Giving simultaneous visibility and contextual risk awareness to engineering teams and the boardroom. So at the moment, a lot of products and output is geared towards the engineers, but they want to be able to see that both at a boardroom view and a technical view and be able to reach different audiences with the same output at the same time. Clearly, the platforms that deliver this need to be secure and they want to be in control of their data. So they want to know what's happening to it, when's it happening, and who can see it and where it's being accessed from. Findings need to be trustworthy. I think we've all seen it with vulnerability scanning or from the scorecards that you get on your organizations showing their risk rating and everything else. Many of those today are still struggling with false positives or lacking context. So the issue might be valid, but in this context, it's not a critical. It's actually a low for whatever reasons. So being able to understand things in context and removing false positives. And deliver positive testing showing what's working well as not. Many pen test reports still show by exception. So here is the stuff that's broken, but don't actually show here's the stuff that's going well. And actually this has been well implemented and has been put in place to deliver things nicely. So we've been thinking about this within LRQA Nettitude, and we've been building a client portal, which some of you may have seen or started to use. We've begun simply with our pen testing services to be able to provide digital reporting as opposed to old PDF reports. And ultimately, the idea is that we can publish findings into the portal, and you guys can then access it immediately. You can ingest it into your systems, you can review it, you can see it, you can interact with it as and when we find it. So you're not waiting for a report to be compiled at the end of the test, but as we see something, it's available to you immediately. And you can start to interact with it, fix it, retest it, and hopefully we can bring that cycle down to a matter of minutes and hours as opposed to days and weeks, which it typically takes with traditional products today. So continuous testing, we want to move towards that in services that we provide. Now, it might not jump from an annual test to continuous overnight, but if we can move from the dial from, say, every month these things are being tested, or every week these things are being tested, or there's a subset that could be automated and they're done every hour, or whatever it might be, there'll be a progression towards that as we move through it. And if you think back to that feasibility study, clearly some of those problems are going to take longer to fix and solve and provide services for than others. Information over insights, it's absolutely critical that we provide this in a way that is meaningful. And I know many people have internal systems and board systems or MI reporting that they want to be able to take this into, but making sure the context is understood or that can be entered and provided around that data was also really key. Removing friction, we've heard this from lots of people. We want to be able to order, book and commission a test simply and easily. So if you suddenly decide you want to have an extra test done or something tested, it's a few clicks away as opposed to going through a laborious process of trying to get things set up or managed so that you can be on top of things as and when needed. And then clear guidance about what to do next. I've got this data, as we were saying right at the beginning. What do I do with it? What does it mean? How does it impact me? And what actions do I need to take or get my business to take in order to address this and fix that? So continuous testing may look something like this, where actually there is a whole suite of services that are provided. So rather than just having a traditional test that happens, there's a whole sequence of things that maybe happen over a prolonged period. So attack service discovery, it's so essential we know what we're looking at. Again, we see many organizations that we deal with ask us to test X, but actually not Y or Z. And actually from anyone we do threat intelligence work with, there's many other things that appear that actually are all related to the organization that either they're not aware of or they're not looking at, whether it's shadow IT, cloud services, third parties or whatever it might be. So having that clear view of that attack surface and then making sure that the appropriate testing is happening in the right areas is really key. Changes, what does a real red team, or a real malicious user do? Very often they recon an organization and then they watch, they wait for that opportune moment. So on that Sunday night when the change control goes through and something doesn't go quite right, they're aware of that, and that's the point when they come in to attack. So providing a service where actually we're watching and we're looking and we're trying to take that mindset of the attacker can help you give you a real world understanding of where things really are, as opposed to point in time again. Having testing done when the majority of your organization doesn't know it's going to happen. Actually testing the muscles, as we were thinking about this morning, around the detection, the response, and the ability to respond in the right way is really crucial. So knowing when those things are happening isn't always the best idea. And ultimately, having a system or a platform that will either provide it as a standalone service to clients who need it, or integrates with your own organizations in terms of how you manage, report, and take these findings in, needs to be there. And that can also cover, obviously, some of the upfront stuff, as well as providing the ability to measure things. Having data from multiple service lines, bringing things in, not just from testing, but also from audit findings, or also from scanning or vulnerability management or SOC instance or whatever it might be, and having a central place where the things can be prioritized, contextualized, and you know exactly what needs to be done in the right way for your organization. So just to finish with then, one more thing. We never stand still. We live in a sector and an age that is rapidly moving, and what happens in the next 6 months will probably be even more exciting as things develop and things move forward. And our industry is going to continue to adapt and change. The technology will continue to adapt and change, but our businesses need to be able to do that as well as things move forward. Bad guys will continue to adapt and change as they see new opportunities and new areas to be able to manipulate things. And therefore, our knowledge needs to adapt and change with that. But I guess as we look at the future, let's just remember we're all part of a collective team. We've all got knowledge in our own businesses. We've got people that we really need to value. And human expertise, integrity, inclusiveness, innovation, it's only really met with the right people, with the right skills, the right outlooks and abilities, collectively working together to work out how we move this forward. So although we talk a lot about technology, I think we've heard a few things today about it, value your good people and make sure that you recognise them and work with them. As the quote says there, one machine can do the work of 50 ordinary people, but no machine can do the work of one extraordinary person. We are way off that happening with AI and ML and everything else at the moment. So that's it. Hopefully a few things just to get you to think. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.